So it is very nice to see you guys. I see a number of you have your computers open, which I do also, but the idea of this session is that you will actually get engaged, which I know some find mildly threatening, but yes, you will be spending the majority of the time actually doing something. So I'm, well, lucky enough to have a picture of myself in two different skin tones. Maybe the slightly more red one is more Marcus in the summer, and the paler one is Marcus during the winter. Pick whatever season fits. So I've been doing information security since 2003. So I've been doing it for it's 22 years now. I got my PhD in how to mess with people, which we tend to call social engineering, the manipulation of people. And then I continued on that path, trying to see how we can influence humans' behavior when it comes to security, which, as it turns out, is fairly difficult. So one of the examples of this is, what is a good password? So we have some ideas here, but you probably all heard a bit about what a good password is. It's something like this. And you all know the rules, so it should be unique for each and every site. You should never reuse it. You should never write it down. You shouldn't save it anywhere. You should have it in, the 300 sites you use, and you should change it every 30 days or something. How many of you feel certain that your colleague, obviously you are doing it because you're really bright people, but your colleagues and friends and family perhaps, how many of you are certain that everyone is adhering to these rules? So hands up. So not a lot of them. So why is that? Well, it turns out that security is actually really hard when it comes to the human element. It is in fact exceedingly difficult to influence human behavior. We assume it is fairly easy, but it turns out that if we actually try to get people to behave slightly differently, it is really difficult. So looking at the large-scale attacks that we see going around now, typically 95% of them primarily exploit human weaknesses. Just let that number sink in. So 95% of large-scale or successful cyber attacks primarily exploit human weaknesses. That is bad security behavior, clicking links, poor passwords, password reuse, opening software you shouldn't do, just poor behavior. They also use other technical aspects once they gain access, but it's 95%. But in research, though, only 5% is spent on trying to address the human element of security. So quite obviously there's a gap here. We are quite good at securing digital systems technically. Actually, we are. We also always talk about the misses, but in fact we have really good technological systems right now, but we do struggle with changing human behavior. And this is in fact not easy at all, so there is a bunch of tools we can use today. You probably have been exposed to a number of them. You can have a person like me having a lecture saying security bad, good behavior good. And you're all, that's inspiring. And then you go back home and change no passwords and do no changes in your day-to-day life. But security seems kind of cool because Marcus had the lecture, high five Marcus. You can also have e-learning campaigns, which is kind of like having a lecture, but way more boring. So you do those while you are on a phone call with someone else. So you are absolutely zero engaged. You can have different campaigns which work better or worse. You can have nano-learning, for instance, which you might have had in your lectures, where you have the assumption that a 3-minute video will change your behavior, which is just preposterous. There's no scientific backing for this at all, and it's just common sensely idiotic. If 3-minute videos worked, your job as a surgeon would be way easier because you send people a link with a 3-minute video saying, don't smoke, don't be fat, don't do bad stuff. And people would be, hey, I'm a fat smoker. But this 3-minute video changed my life. But it just doesn't work in reality. And you also have gamification. Now, gamification is very fun to do research on because you develop games. But it's really hard to do research on because you can mostly measure whether or not people actually like a game. And most people doing gamification loves games. And this is a big flaw because they design complicated games. So the typical state of the art is games that takes a lot of time. And the one thing we know, or I know because I have a bit of a hubris here, is that Nohlberg's first law. Typically you get laws when you die, but who wants to wait? It's way better to have your own laws when you live, so it's just more fun. So the first law in cybersecurity, and the most important one to remember, is people hate security, but they want to be secure. So all of you feel that being secure online and in jobs, etc., is of the utmost important. You just don't want to do anything to be secure. And this is always true. So most games hasn't been developed with the focus of people actually not liking security, but assuming that people like security and like games, which they just don't do. So I wanted to counterpoint that. So Seguro is the game that we will be playing. You will be playing it. It was actually, funnily enough, inspired by a session in INGENIUM in Crete, 2004. Was anyone else there in Crete, 2004? Oh. So, yeah. So we played an actually fun game about art history. And what struck me during that session is the fact that games can actually be fun. And even games that teaches you stuff can be fun. So with that as a starting point, I wanted to develop an actually fun game. But the other aspect was that we realized that even if I have a lecture, people think security is fun, but they don't really get involved. So I wanted to have something that makes everyone in the room engaged with security. Because security is actually kind of fun. It is. Trust me, I see doubtful faces in the audience here, but once you're a researcher in it, it is actually fun. So this, as so many other things in my life, became a passion/obsession. I'm not very good at doing small projects, so this ended up being a very, very complicated project. The starting idea, I think, was 10 plus 4 cards. I ended up with 190 plus 30 cards, so it just grew and grew and grew and grew. Which is bad for me, but fun. So the objectives when creating the games was very easy to start. So 2 minutes, because remember, people hate security. So if we have a rule section that takes 15 minutes to explain, we typically only have 40 minutes anyhow. So half of that time is explaining the rules and half of the audience is going to be, I don't understand this. So I won't be engaged. So 2 minutes, but also not a solved game. The term in game theory is solved games. Tic-tac-toe is a solved games, which means that you can actually learn it by heart and play it optimally. So it shouldn't be a game where you have a number of really good people that knows it and wins every single time, so there has to be a random element to it. It cannot be a knowledge-based game, because then it wouldn't be fun to play with people of different levels of competence. Adaptable to individual knowledge, so different levels. We will only be playing level 1. There's 3 levels. Level 3 is super difficult even for me. So it's an actually difficult level, but level 1 is targeted to the general public. It's self-sustained, so there are QR codes, so if you don't know a term, you can actually look them up on a web page. It focuses heavily on social learning, because one of the things we know from pedagogics is, and we talked about this yesterday in the fantastic session with environmental cards, we got involved socially and talked to each other, and that engaged at least my learning quite a bit. So I wanted something where we actually learn from each other, but also it should be fun to a reasonable extent, considering this is going to be done during working hours. So not too much fun, but reasonably fun. It took forever. There was a bunch of prototypes. I hired a bunch of different designers. I spent a tremendous amount of time building a ridiculously big web page with hundreds of terms explained. I play tested with students who just loved it. I realized then that it wasn't really super easy to learn. I imagined it was, but I wanted to create a video. This took also forever, because every one of these things ends up taking tens or hundreds of hours to do. So you're going to see that video today. So that's the background. So the idea here was an accessible game, reasonably fun, reasonably engaging. So we're going to play it together in groups of 4. If there's an odd team, it's absolutely fine to play with 3 persons on one side. You can have 2 teams of 3 playing against each other. You can mix that up. It's funnier if you play with people you don't know, but it's not required. So just move around and sit in groups of 4 to begin with now. So we need 1 more player here. So these are the very brief instructions, these are the action cards, and these are the level cards. We'll inform more shortly. So next group, here's your cards and the very brief instruction. You'll see the video shortish. And there's another group. Yep, sure. You have 3 on 1 team. And 1 group there. Now, everyone has a deck cards. So, what's going to happen now is that you will see the instruction video. You will then have time to play. My notion is we'll have time to play 2 full games. Typically, games take 10-ish minutes. It depends. You can use a timer on your cell phones because it's a 1-minute round thing, or whatever kind of timer you want. You do have those on your cell phones, I hope. Otherwise, we'll have a more complicated scenario. Keep in mind, it's a simplistic game intended to play kind of fun. So the typical thing, if rules are complicated, you play, what's it, stone, what's it called? Rock, paper, scissors, thank you. The video will explain it. You'll play roughly 2 rounds. In the end, there will be a brief survey, and I'll talk a little bit about the experiences developing this. So, let's see if the video works. Welcome to Seguro, the game where learning meets strategy and fun. The goal of Seguro is to outscore your opponents by correctly identifying terms and strategically using action cards. It's played in teams of 2, with each team competing against another team. The term cards have terms on them, and the action cards are creative modifiers. There are 3 kinds of action cards: the ones that you play before a round to mess with the way your opponents will play, cards that are played during a round to create fast-paced changes, and the defensive cards that you can play at any time to protect your team. Each team plays with 7 term cards and 3 action cards. Each round lasts 60 seconds. In the first round, explain the term cards using different words. You cannot use other languages or cheat, so be creative. The other player on your team guesses the terms. If you don't know the term, you can pass. You get 1 point for each correct guess. After the round, ask the other team about the terms you don't know. If no one knows, you can look them up together using the QR code on the cards. Then the other team will play their first round. In the second round, switch players within the team, and the other player now explains the terms using only attack methods. For the third round, you switch again. The player will now explain the terms using only defensive strategies. When both teams complete 3 rounds with the same 7 term cards, that is 1 game. You discard the old cards, draw all new cards, and begin again. 2 games make a match, and the team with the highest combined points win. You can get 21 points per game and 42 points per match, but action cards can change this. If you have a conflict with the other team, settle it by playing rock, paper, scissors. Now it's your turn. Play, learn, and have fun with Seguro. So, you mix the cards, you mix the term cards, and you mix the action cards, and you have 3 action cards per team and 7 term cards. Are term cards, yes, and the other ones are action cards. So mix them, 3 action cards per team, 7 term cards.
so. But we're supposed to be doing two.
They probably need to do with the security. Because I think it's very different.
Right.
7
Yeah.
cards, 3 action cards, and read up on the action cards.
Yeah, okay, so then.
See what
So the first one is a like for one.
There's some nervous. Huh?
1 minute per card. So let's try for the.
And these should just be randomly selected. You shouldn't read them. Just mix them together and get read.
There is
No,
one
turn
card
cards,
for
7. 7 of the cards you know them first. Yes, so that's why you learn them. It's the yes, you know the 7 ones you just have. So it is to kind of force your feet. But you can also mess with the other team with the action cards.
Time's up.
to explain these words, but keeping this meaning. Okay, yes.
I'm sorry.
So I think we are about to run out of time. So you can, if you want to finish the round you're on now, if you are in the middle of a round, or if you're pretty much done, you can just leave the cards. So thank you for playing. I should have left that. So one of the things I want you to do before we go further is to do a very brief round of feedback. So there's a web page for this. You can scan the QR code if you want. Hopefully it works. See, I love you guys. See? Yes. So, see, already something magical has happened. But if you're not comfortable with the QR code, you can try to use tinyurl./Siguro instead. It should point to the same place.
Something.
Yes.
How the name of the game came up?
So, fun story, medium fun story.
We have a word that means certain, be certain of something, and it is seguros.
Yeah. So 20 years ago, we looked into finding a good domain name. And Siguro ended up being similar to security in numerous languages. I think it was in Albania, it was also in Greece, it was in sorry? Also in Italian. So it kind of sounded like security. So we managed to get that domain name almost 20 years ago. So we have all of those. So that's kind of why I built on it, because it seems similar to security in numerous languages. And it also has a guru in it, which is kind of cool also. So that's the point. So, but if you can, I'd love, it's just 10 short questions. It's not working, that's fun. Too much security, okay, that's... Okay, so we hate the security. That's good. This is exactly what you want. So for me, it works, scanning. Yeah, so if you can visit, either use the QR code or just go to the domain, tinyurl.com, if it's the QR code thing. So I tried it on several computers and browsers this morning, so... So it's just 10 quick questions. And there's nothing better to get people to actually answer surveys than to make them do it in a room. Some final words then on the kind of experience. So there's basically one question I have, and that's, did you have fun? Yeah. So that's the key point. As I saw you play, we had the typical dynamic that we always see, especially with academics, which is that as we start, you want to understand the game completely. So you don't want to play the game unless you completely understand it, and you also want to know all the cards. So most academics that's not in the field get frustrated by the fact that it's actually a difficult game. Because you want to have 7 cards correct the first time you play. The other aspect that also happens is after a while you kind of understand that the purpose of the game is playing it, not playing it correctly. Because you get the dynamics, and suddenly after 10 or 15 minutes we start to hear people laughing. Which is really what I'm after. Because then people are starting to lean back, lean into the rules, and just starting to socialize. Because the key aspect of this isn't actually that you play the game precisely. The key aspect is that you play it together with other people, and suddenly you talk about security. And you not being in a security field means that most likely you spent more time during these 40 minutes actually engaging with security than you do in maybe 2 or 3 years in your work situations. Because most typically in a work situation, you would have, once again, me saying security is important for an hour, and then you would surf around and look at your cell phone and not be engaged. But in this case, you couldn't avoid being engaged in security. And that's the point. And the other thing to remember is this is not a game intended for you to bring home to play with the family. There is a version of that that's focused on learning kids or youths about internet security that covers things that you would never talk about normally with your kids, like sexual abuse materials, these very dark things that happens online. So there's a version dependent within the same notion that you have kids or teachers or groups of kids actually talking about that. Because I would venture to say that almost none of you has ever talked about these terminologies before. But still, the 34 terms you have here are crucial attacks that pretty much happens against your organizations or yourself at least every year. So going back to the medical field, these are the big killers. These are the big 5 killers that's going to hit most of you and your organization, but still you didn't know them. So there's a general gap. You're highly educated, smart people, but security isn't your primary task. So then, final words here. So it took an insanely long time to make this game simple. Like, it's flabbergastingly how long it took to make it as simple as this, but not more simple, because you still want to be able to play it more and more times. Because as soon as I spoke to anyone who's actually good at game design, they wanted to make it more complicated. Every single time. It was in-game currencies, it was secondary modifier cards, it was levels, it was objective cards, etc. Some of you are laughing because you probably play games and you understand what I'm saying, but every single discussion I had was make it more complicated, and I just wanted to make it more simple, because this isn't super easy anyhow. But if we make it more simple, it suddenly becomes a solvable game, and you don't want that either. So, but the other aspect that I learned is that fun beats anything else. So the rules aren't super clear by design, because I want you to discuss the rules. I want you to be angry with the other team. I want you to try to cheat, because that is what security is about. It's about finding ways to exploit. So the modification cards gets you to think like a person in the security business, by trying to modify and change the reality. So it's not just about knowing about the attacks. If you play this long enough, you suddenly will have a security skill set, which is optimizing the cards you have and trying to find vulnerabilities. So it also teaches you a life skill. That's not really something that you see. The other thing that's fun to have here, 2 things, is it takes a lot of time to see if a game works. Because it's very easy to measure, like we did now. Was the game approachable, understandable, etc.? People tend to, whatever, like it or not like it. But does it work? Yeah, we would have to measure you guys in 6 months and see if you are better than a reference group, and suddenly this becomes very complicated. What I am certain about, though, is that this is more efficient by getting you involved in security rather than the existing metrics, which is lectures or text. Because once again, you became involved in this. The other aspect is that we have different versions. I talked briefly about the internet version, which is for kids and youths, which is something that we're developing further now. But we also have a version for nursing when it comes to diseases, using the same mechanics. What are the 100 most common diseases? What's the way to treat them? What's the symptoms? So this approach is scalable in other fields also. So, thank you for your time. I'm basically on time, which is unusual for me. Any questions or comments? Yes.
So, are you using this with your students, your cybersecurity students, or could you also envisage using this in terms of cybersecurity awareness training amongst faculty?
Yep, so that Yeah, so I should have mentioned that. There's 3 levels. Level 1, the one you were playing now, is literally for everyone. So these are the things that everyone in a professional setting should know. So level 1 is for everyone. Level 2 is for people in IT, which is slightly more focused. Level 3 is for very much security specialists. I would say that looking at my master students in information security, they would be 95% on level 1. They would be maybe 50, 60% on level 2, and 10 or 15% on level 3. So it's actually difficult on level 3, like frustratingly so. But yes, the idea is that everyone should play this to get a general understanding of security, maybe after a lecture.
I see it far more effective, like we were discussing here at our own table. We experienced a cybersecurity attack in our own university year before last, and we're still recovering from the effects of that. And we, like in terms of staff awareness and training, like we've been asked to do e-learning, which is soul destroying, and
it just doesn't work.
It's a tick box exercise, really, to be honest. I think something like this is like, I've come away from this with an awareness of more terminology, you know, what actually that means, that fits into that. It's not actually, it's frightening, but not frightening at the same time. So the few minutes of that game, or the time that we spent in that game, far more effective than any e-learning that I've engaged in. So yeah.
Yep, thank you for those words. And this is really, I mean, I've been, all kidding aside, I've been doing this for, more than 2 decades now. I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lectures in all kinds of scenarios for students, organizations, everyone. And the thing is, people listen, but they don't get involved. And I'm really a good lecturer. That's not the point. It's just the limit of the technology versus this, which is that you move people around from just sitting around listening and saying, hey, security seems scary, to being in a group with peers, which is really a workable knowledge. But as I said, the existing solutions takes forever to explain. And this,
coming up with scenarios that different things that we'd experienced as well, so that we could align them with
exactly. So, and you have this. This is the way human has learned forever. We talk about stuff and we share experiences and we interpret things. But the one thing that you should remember on this, if I look at it from a more serious note, is that people will teach each other what they know. They might not be correct. And that's an important thing to remember. You definitely create awareness, but there's really no quality check. So you can have a very strong member in a group just lying about stuff. And that will then grow as a virus in an organization with misinformation. So that's why you have the QR codes, etc. But it creates awareness, but not in a way that we are typically fond of in academia, which is that it has to be very precise and exact.
So for the comment you made about awareness, everyone who deals in pedagogy knows that the first rule of learning for our mind is interaction.
Yeah.
Without interaction, there is no learning. That's just fact. But the fact that this game can be used as, I don't want to diminish it, but as a conversation piece.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's exactly what it was intended to. So.
There is a huge value in such there is a great opportunity in it, because even without the QR codes, if we forget the factual information, that means that if, for example, you are trying to have a workshop about cybersecurity, after this game you will have about 20 people or 30 people actually caring about what you are going to say next.
Yep.
So even if there is no, if our long-term memory discards every single information about email spoofing, deepfakes, or the Nigerian prince, etc., for 409, thank you. For the next hour or so, you have our attention. This is, from an educational point of view, what we call orientation, is an extremely valuable tool in your disposal as an educator. So I really think there is great value in this game, in these kind of activities, even if we forget the QR codes and what the actual information is.
Thank you, really, thank you. So Well, it's been a blast playing with you, or you playing and me listening in here. I'm fairly easy to find online. If you have any other comments, please just leave the games and I'll the decks and I'll collect them later. Thank you all so much, very much. Thank you and thank you.